Servus Männer, it's Red Pill Germany again. In May in Germany, we reached officially inflation rates of 7.9%. The true number, of course, is expected to be higher, but that is what they officially say. 8%, that is already a high number for German standards. And a lot of people act surprised now. They're almost as if they didn't expect that. The prices are going up. And our media political complex, as I said many times, is of course trying to blame that on what is going on right now in Eastern Europe. So I wanted to discuss this inflation a little bit that we're having here in Germany. Of course, we don't have that in Germany only. Also, the US has seen that for a long time already, especially with food and gas prices and, of course, housing. Many things are similar on the symptomatic side, but maybe in Europe or in Germany, we have different government programs that are responsible for that. And today I want to talk a little bit about that. So when we have inflation, that means that the equation has two sides, so to speak. That is, we have a supply side and a demand side. And the problem lies, I think in this case, on both sides. However, a lot of people discuss only one of those sides at a given time, which is okay. But let's look at both of them. We know for a longer time now that since 2020 and a little bit before that, you can say even, that we have something called deglobalization. That means all these globalized supply chains that have been built up in recent decades, well, they are a little bit built back and they're disrupted even. With the China bug, we have seen major disruptions in global supply chains. So that means that the supply side is weakening. And that would mean scarce supply, prices go up. But what about the demand side? Well, there is a lot of money in the market. There was a lot of money printing, lots of stimuli. The US had their own kinds of stimulus checks, and we here in Europe, we also, the European Central Bank, they had a program where they would buy state or government bonds in order to directly finance European Union member states. And this is something that shouldn't be happening according to what's written in the rule book, but that all is thrown out of the window in the European Union as soon as it's convenient or necessary, as they claim. So what that means is that the European Central Bank was printing a lot of money basically and giving it to member states in order to keep them afloat. You can think of that as a state level stimulus check for those member countries. And they're still going on with that. This is still, they want to go on until next year even, maybe at a reduced level than how it was during the peak of the crisis, but they're still doing that to this day. And of course, you know that the European Central Bank will not significantly raise the interest rate, which means that they want to keep all that money in the system. And where does this money ultimately go? What do the member states do with that money? Well, they are, to a great part at least, they're giving it to poor people. Well, not only, of course, but we have seen something in Germany called Kurzarbeit, which means that it's called short labor, which means that, for example, a worker who is no longer needed full time and in a, otherwise constructed economic system, that worker in a crisis like that would have lost his job. But with Kurzarbeit, he can stay employed and the state pays for half the expenses or the labor cost, and the company just pays the other 50%. So that's how the company can afford to keep that person employed, but the money is coming from freshly printed money, so to speak, from the European Central Bank. And that is, of course, causing that the worker in the end has the same money in his bank account at the beginning of the month, and that means he can consume at the usual rate, whereas otherwise he would have less money to consume, to spend. And that is how this money printing scheme, um, when you use it in a crisis like that, in order to support poorer people or people who would otherwise have lost their job. Also welfare payments. That also allows people who otherwise couldn't spend money at the supermarket to all of a sudden buy potatoes and eggs and tomatoes, driving the prices for these goods up. Yeah. So you have the supply side, you have the demand side, and both sides are favoring now rising prices. Once again, supply chains are disrupted, supply goes down. You have a lot of money that was artificially put into the system by money printing and redistribution schemes that are implemented differently at the national level in all these countries in the West. But in the end, it's pretty much the same. Yeah? You take freshly printed Fed money or European Central Bank money and you distribute it to the states. And what they do is they, in order to calm people down and to help them out a little bit, you give these stimulus checks, or you have these programs like Kurzarbeit, short labor, or you raise the retirement payments like they did now in Germany. I think retirees in Germany are getting 5% more now. That is also something. Then the other thing is the minimum wage has been raised in Germany to 12 euros an hour. Until a couple of years ago, we didn't have a minimum wage because we have something in Germany that's called Tarifautonomie. That means that the employers and the employees, with their respective representations, with the unions and with the association of employers and all these things, they negotiate and they work out the wages by themselves. The state, the government has no business interfering here, but the minimum wage is something that is breaking with this German tradition of Tarifautonomie. Yeah, and you can see that this raising of the minimum wage as another distributive measure that will do the same, drive up at least at least the amount of euros, the sum of euros that these poorer people have at their disposal, and they will consume, of course, with that money. They can't do anything else but consume, I guess, and that will drive up the prices even further. Yeah? So you have both sides, supply demand side, screaming for higher prices, and I don't see what this has to do with the situation in Eastern Europe. It has started way before that, so it cannot be caused by that, of course. Maybe it is made a little worse, but especially, I mean, energy, oil and gas, that's of course a huge factor because we need that in almost every aspect of our industry. It's in food production, of course, it's in all the transport, distribution. Basically, every good contains in some way, or the price of every good contains energy costs in some way or another, just like capital costs. And what do we see here, of course? Let's take Germany as an example. Of course, it's easy to blame Putin now, but it's not like Putin said no more gas for Germany. It's the other way around, actually. Germany said we don't want your gas anymore, or now there is an oil embargo and all these things. So that is completely in line with this green policy of becoming independent of fossil fuel and energy sources, and that means no more oil and gas for good. And this is what their plan is. They have no alternative, of course. They have no plan B. They don't have anything to offer in order to make up for that, or to replace that with. But they say, we want to be climate neutral, CO2 neutral, and that means we will get rid of all this oil and gas and coal, and of course nuclear also. So just green energy. and then people expect that the prices stay low. Yeah, that is crazy. All right, so I will in future videos look a little deeper, that's my plan now at least, into some of these issues, especially on the German side, so how it is implemented and how it looks like in Germany. Maybe I give some real numbers as an example. But it is, yeah, I think it's gonna stay. It's pretty severe for people who don't have a lot of money to spend, who were, or let's phrase that in another way, who were calculating without leaving any leeway before. Yeah? If they just made ends meet, if they live in an apartment that they can just afford, and everything yeah, worked out to the last penny or the last cent towards the end of the month, those people are in trouble now. If you have people that had a huge saving rate, well, they just reduced their saving rate a little bit, but they can still maintain the same lifestyle, more or less. But people who were struggling or who were calculating very critically at first, before the crisis, let's say, or yeah, until like a year ago, they are in trouble now. All right, take care. Servus, Kameraden.